Bhagavate Ramakrishna Om. Salutations to Bhagavan Ramakrishna. Welcome to Approaching Meditation Class 13, Stilling Time. The question comes, is stilling time even possible? Time is uniform, linear, unchanging. And we see all the changes in nature happening within time. And if time wasn't ordered, everything would be chaotic. Life itself and the machines and everything that we have will be difficult but then how we have managed, we have assumed, we have standardized time. We talk about time being uniform and linear and static. Time is also measured according to the speed of light. But the speed of light itself has got variations. In a vacuum, it's different, 300,000 kilometers per second. In water, in glass, the medium dictates the speed of light, and that also will dictate the speed of the speed of time, how it moves. So time slows down in certain instances for obvious reasons. If you are far away from the center of gravity, time actually moves slowly. Okay. We also have different observers having different ideas of time. So this perception of time itself, as you say, is not felt in the senses, because the senses, etc., are quite limited. If this is time, it's connected deeply with nature, deeply with life. Any kind of disruption, time is a disruption in nature and life. I would further go and say it is actually nature. Time is nature. One of the questions raised about the first cause of this universe, the ancient sages says, time. So it is present everywhere, and yet it is intangible. What exactly is it? Stephen Hawking wrote A Brief History of Time, and everybody thought we got the whole thing wrapped up. The book is good and the book is difficult, but time, its understanding still eludes us. And that could be one of those great illusions of a life. Okay. Let's put it something like this. There's something called a time dilation. Okay. Writers, when they put their narrative down, they can create an illusion of prolonging things, going into details, and which gives us an illusion of time getting slow for the reader, of course. And they can rush through things. It gives you the illusion of, time is fast. The same thing happens with cinema. And we always see that there is, you can say, a contraction and an expansion of time in our minds. It depends on the external stimulus. When you have Suppose there is a person, and it's quite a common experience, just before the car can crash in an accident, it's as if time has slowed down. The peripheral, you can see, objects kind of recede. We are focused on just one small area and everything goes slow. It's not only during accidents, any kind of danger will give us that sense of elongation of time. It's because of the flight and fight, we can say, response. The brain is churning fast, and the external world is much slower, let's say. So there is a kind of a dilation and a contraction of time also. The memory is very sharp and things happen in slow motion. There is also something called, when your mind is engaged with something, what happens? You don't feel the passage of time. And when you're not doing anything, you see time hangs heavy on our hands. We keep on looking at our watches. Hey. So I'm just trying to get the idea that there's a variability in the perception of time. Time is time, but our experiences are all different. There's also another illusion. Suppose during experiments there was seen that when kind of dangerous images were projected on a screen as if approaching you, it appeared much slower than the same image receding, because that perception of danger, everything became kind of slow. The brain itself wants to see things very distinctly. So these neutral images, of course, there was no kind of perception of a time dilation or a kind of a, you can say, contraction. But the mind also contributes to this sense of time. Okay. Let's go. In yoga, the entire idea is to keep the mind in the present. The mind goes to the past, it's called smriti, and projects its thoughts or desires in the future. So this is another illusion. The whole thing has to be kept in the present. That is the essence of yoga. So smriti and kalpana. Smriti is actually what is called memories. And the mind and the chitta, as I said, the very mind stuff is responsible for this kind of orientation of the present towards the past. In fact, most of us live in the past. We are hardly in the present. And even the present, the experience happens, any experience. I look at this chair and in a fraction of a second, it's gone. It's in the past now. In fact, as I'm looking at this chair itself, it has gone in the past. So the past and the present kind of are so synced. We don't know what our, you can say, experiences really are. Now, as we keep on practicing meditation, the whole thing is trying to keep the mind in the present. And if you can keep it for a long time, then the past and the future projections, they kind of just slow down. And they merge inside. To keep the mind in the present, you need tremendous strength. I mean mental strength, not physical strength, of course. And then we can keep on extending the present. You will see that a present consciousness keeps on expanding and expanding and expanding. It's a tremendous feeling of liberation. You get liberated from the thraldom of time. This happens in ultra concentration, not ordinary concentration. Very high degree of, you can say, fine one-pointed concentration gives you this, the expansion of the present. The whole world, and what happens? Becomes still to you. Yeah. Okay. There is another aspect that why does time become still when the mind is still? Because the mind understands movements. Time is understood according to movements in time and space. The mind also is situated within time and space. And a thought arises, it has to arise within time and within space. And the both are connected to causation. The old Sanskrit philosophers used to say there is something called time-space causation. Desh, Kal, Nimitta. We kind of tied time-space together. But we never tied the entire other three dimensions also to it. There is causation also linked to time and space. So a thought rises, dips, as I say, a wave rises, dips. It happens in time, and then there it comes. So to hold that for a moment, 2 moments, 5 moments is stilling the mind, because the movements have all become still. Whenever the movements have become still, time vanishes. Yeah, if there is a movement, there is time, and there is space also. And the very movement, it happens according to the first. The cause gives rise to the effect, and the effect again becomes a cause in its turn. One thought gives rise to the next thought gives rise to the third, and so on and so on. This is, to boil it, the yoga down, it is this. Okay. In the last class, we had mentioned something called the deep time. Our bodies are molded in time and space, yeah, the nervous system, and we had spoken about those giant, you can say, nerves running up and down our spine, the afferent and the efferent nerves, the sensory and the motor. These are within ordinary time. There are deeper layers of these psychic currents, and when I mention the word psychic, it's not mystical in that crazy sense of way. It is above normal. So there are those deeper layers. It's called the sun and the moon, or the Pingala and the Ida. They run up and down. It's not two, it's just one looping around, as we have mentioned, like a kind of a 8 running up and down. And as we can embed ourselves in those, we get into much deeper time. There is still another higher aspect. It's called the deepest time, or you can say the deeper time. That's when the currents, if it is a trained yogi, or even due to some reason, some of those currents, they escape and run through the central, you can say, Sushumna, the canal. What happens is, the universe appears as different. You get multiple visions of this universe in different, you can say, dimensions. You enter a different dimension. It's it is still a dimension of time because there is still movement. In many cultures, they speak about things like heaven. In very genuine cases of close encounters, or not close encounters in the sense, near-death experiences, they see visions of, you can say, light and beauty and sound, and everything is so beautiful and everything is so calm and quiet, and there's love and joy, etc., etc. A minute portion of that deep, you can say, psychic time enters into the deeper channels of the Sushumna. There is still movement. People can see that light and sound and beauty and all that, These are, people say that this is heaven. For the yogis, okay. As the psychic currents keep on propelling itself higher and higher, this universe appears as subtle, and then its causal forms. And as these dimensions of time are transcended one after another, time and space, of course, and when it reaches the metropolis of all sensations, here, the brain, Sahasrara, the 1,000-petal lotus, time stands still. You transcend time. Because we always use the word timelessness. Now, what's timelessness? We don't have any idea of time. It's just a kind of, we juxtapose an idea of timelessness because we know what's time. Okay. Which is an illusion? Time or timelessness? For us right now, timelessness is just a word, it's just an illusion. We don't have any idea of it. Because we are now in this present moment of this time. At that stage, this time becomes an illusion. That timelessness becomes real. So there is a gradual, you can say, elevation of your own sense of how real time is, from the very, you can say, the gross aspect of time, mundane, to the highest, the idea of the subtle spiritual experiences of time. So, till you attain to the very crest, you are still within time. They say, if you have the perception of time, you will have to have a perception of a name and form. You will have to have the perception of going from one place to the other, space again. So, these things have limitations. The moment you have time, the limitation. So, but when you reach the crest, it's all over. Okay. In the Bible, there is a quotation: "Be still and know that I am God." Of course, different theologians explain it differently. It's in the Psalms. But it's a perfect quotation for yoga and Vedanta. Be still and know that I am God. This is that stilling time. When you be still, your entire mental faculties are still. Your breath is still. Your body becomes still. And time also becomes stilled. It's only in the yoga aphorisms we come across an aphorism that says, "Shanat tat kramayo samyamad vivekajam jnanam." So, it means, Swami Vivekananda, by making a samyama on a particle of time and its precision and succession comes the knowledge of discernment between the reality and the unreality. So, the yogi can meditate on a particle of time, on a moment of time. Now, the philosophy of yoga has got many technical words. The word samyama ordinarily means control. It's not exactly that. It is the triad, that is intense concentration, meditation, that is dhyana, not the ordinary sitting and closing it, and samadhi. These three, when used together as a kind of a tool, you can, and where on the structure of time, one can conquer time. Now you'll say, is time some kind of particle we can is kind of floating about? No. It's the perception of time in the mind. It's the mind meditating on itself, the mind meditating on the mind. That is what happens. And when you can do that, the entire, you can say, superstructure of time and space, etc., vanish. Okay, then what happens? There is another verse, aphorism in the Yoga Sutras that says, Rupa lavanya bala vajra sanghananatvani kaya sampathat. So, something called, at that moment when you've conquered time, what happens? The word uses, the yogi breaks the rod of time and lives in this universe. Breaking the rod of time, the yogi lives in this universe with the body. The perception of himself as the body has all gone. But the yogi has broken off the rod of time. That is an achievement which will lead you to the stillness of time. Time becomes still. So, again, one of the Upanishads says, Na tasya jara no rogo no mrityu praptasya yogagnimayam shariram. For him, there is no disease, no decrepitude, no death. He has acquired a body made from the fire of yoga. This is the stilling of time, the conquest of time. It's not just stilling. You still time. To recap, stilling time can be done by stilling the mind. And we have to understand that to still the mind, you have to have a tremendous sense of, in our previous classes we said there is something called the power of reflection. Like, I am speaking to you, you are listening to me, and yet you feel there's another part of me who can see, I can see myself as standing and speaking, kind of a detached witness. This power is there in all minds. So you increase that witness attitude towards your actions and then use that to meditate on the mind meditating on the mind. So there is in Vedanta, there is something called a manonasha, something called destruction of the mind. Now you think, destroy the mind. How do you destroy the mind? Destroy the idea of time and you. But what happens? Nothing happens. You think your existence depends on your mind. Oh no. When you go to sleep, the mind goes back to its causes. There is no time. You can see that. When you are reading a book and you engage with it, you don't see the passage of time there. It's mind can get stilled, mind can get concentrated. So these are just ordinary perceptions available to everybody. At that higher stage, you can completely transcend the mind, and then this time that you see all around, like we have standardized time, like 60 minutes for now. Why should it be? what made these old Babylonians think about like that? And we've still continued that. And to break the chain, they said, keep it at 60 minutes. Why? So, and we've set our clocks, and we've set a GPS, and we set everything. We are happy with it. Second, what's second? What's minute? What's an hour? These are verbal constructs now. They have become materialized into machines. It's all, as they say, it's unreal. And at that stage of perception of timelessness, this appears as a mirage. Okay, now that we have recapped, and as we usually do, we do a short, you can say, session of meditation. We generally start with a meditation, but since this topic was a little kind of deep, I wanted to do justice to this. As well as we also have this idea that, these are preliminary classes as we approach meditation. But this particular class, or in the previous class, these are slightly kind of higher aspects of yoga. But don't worry, the idea is to show various aspects of yoga so that you can approach this meditation. Okay? So please sit down straight, close your eyes, and as usual, keep your spine straight. Stretch your spine, please. Keep your chin up slightly. Yes. And gaze, as it were, at the point just outside your nose or a point on your chin. Become aware of your breath, please. Your diaphragm. Your diaphragm just rises and falls. Feel the pulsations of your heart, the lub-dub. Don't visualize anything now. Now look within you and feel your body made just of pure light. Light suffuses your entire body. Your whole body is lit up with this pale yellowish light. Feel that bliss. Feel that light. This is life, prana. This is you. Now in the center of your chest, feel a brighter spot there within all that other light. Go towards that ball of light. Like water swirling down a sink. You swirl down that ball of light as light. Light approaching greater light. Okay, take it easy. Stop all visualization. Feel your diaphragm move up and down, please. Take long, deep breaths. You can slowly open your eyes. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Two questions. Does stilling time make time as we know it less important, carry less weight? Can you reiterate how the mind can meditate on the mind? It is not only making time less important, is when you reach the very end of time, as they say, time becomes unreal to you. So it becomes less important, it becomes less relevant. Yes, it doesn't carry any weight. It's just a perception that is kind of dominating a worldview. When you come to the end of time or you still the mind, time as we know it goes away, space as it goes, and everything. There are various dimensions of time. And as I mentioned, even in this world, this tangible world, there are various dimensions of time. How can you reiterate how the mind can meditate on the mind itself? As I mentioned, make the present moment expand. So the past slowly fades away. I mean, the mind will not go back to its past. Now the mind will project anything in the future. Try to keep the mind in the present. And as you keep the mind in the present, your consciousness starts expanding. And as it expands, you will slowly transcend time. Some of these processes that I've mentioned, they are meant, of course, for those who have been practicing it for years, and it becomes easy for them. But it's not that I don't want to dissuade you. Keep on trying to. The present should be all that you should be engaged in when you are meditating. That's the best starting point. Don't try to, when you're trying to meditate, hundreds of thoughts will come up. They generally don't come up at other times. They do, but not in that same number and force. But when you're meditating, hundreds of things come up. So quell them. Keep the present thought of a mantra or a kind of a deity you're meditating on constantly, and that will stop the movements of the mind. So if you can movement the mind, that's. Thank you for this question.